we were looking at this particular case study, which was a very simple case study to bring out the differences between absorption costing or full absorption costing and activity-based costing. In the first meeting, we went through the calculations and the question basically on the basis of traditional product costing. If anybody refers you to traditional costing, then they mean absorption costing. And that's all about physical areas within a production facility, within a factory or a workshop where certain activities take place. Now, activity-based costing sounds very grand, and it sounds as though initially it's going to be really difficult because it's associated with modern manufacturing methods. But in actual fact, it's a similar sort of thing, similar sort of objective of trying to charge products or the output of a factory with all the costs, including the overheads of running the factory and supporting the production facility. So let's have a look at the suggested solution to this. And you'll bear in mind that to help you through all of this, it looks complicated, but anything in the workings which is in blue means that you don't have to work that figure out. That is given as part of the case study. And arrows show how calculated figures, which of course are in black, are used elsewhere in the calculations. So you can follow the workflow, you might say. MH stands for a machine hour, and DLH stands for direct labor hours. And you're asked to note that all the figures are budgeted figures. Now let's look at activity-based costing. Now, activity-based costing is all about, let's go and have a look at the question. It takes a different view. And this is the sort of data a business would need to collect in order to introduce an activity-based costing system. It's relevant to you as engineers because the engineers will be involved in this. You'll be involved in management accounting systems anyway, because people will need to know about processes, what the demands of processes are, how they work, how they affect output, and so on and so forth. So you're going to be an active player in this sort of system. But when setting up an activity-based costing system, it needs a different sort of analysis. And the analysis is on an activity basis. So you're not concerned with the production department, you're not concerned with the cafeteria, you're not concerned with stores, you're concerned with activities. What activities go on in your factory and what are the drivers of cost? If you look at the videos on microphone production, then one of them is on AEA microphones in Pasadena. That's worth a look because they're organized in a very small building. They make all their microphones by hand and they basically run a workshop. And the other video goes to Australia and looks at Rode microphones. A lot of you, if you do video, may well have a Rode video mic. They're not bad, but they are produced on a grand scale. When you're in Pasadena at AEA's workshop, there are no white coats at all and very little in the way of machines. I think I make the comparison that it's a bit like going to the Stradivarius workshop in 17th century Italy. No mass production at all. Stradivarius made about 1,000 instruments over his lifetime. That was his entire output. But go to the Rode factory and you find loads and loads of machines. The tour that I've posted is by the owner, a guy called Friedman, who is the intelligence, you might say, and the drive behind that company. And he keeps showing off his machines and how they cost millions individually and what they can do and how every single circuit board is exactly the same as the previous one. And that's the way they produce microphones. But they can do it at half the price easily of someone else. And apologies to those of you before we continue who are going to complain that I keep talking about microphones. The people who complain about me talking about microphones are roughly equaled by the number of people who says there's nothing on engineering in this course. It's all about accounting. It's just accounting figures and arithmetic. The guy doesn't know anything about engineering. He doesn't know anything about engineering processes. He doesn't make any reference to engineering. Well, engineering is a big subject. And as I've said, I would be happy to illustrate all my lectures using microphones since they illustrate everything that you need to know, or using my motorbikes. I've got several motorbikes. and I'd be quite happy to get them in the lecture hall and talk about Japanese factory-produced motorbikes versus slightly more idiosyncratic Italian classic motorbikes. But anyway, that's enough of engineering. Let's go on to the accounting and continue. So what we've got is that the analysis of this particular factory has decided that these are the main cost drivers. They're not the only activities, but these are the activities which seem to drive costs in this factory. We're back to machines, but instead of talking about a machine hour, we're just talking about the costs that are related to time on machines, and that came to 760,000. The setup costs are regarded as the second most important driver of costs here, and that came to 475,000. I don't know what it is about the materials used, but getting them is an expensive business in terms of administration. Not the cost of the materials, but costs associated with materials procurement came to 380,000. And quality control, in the sense of inspection costs, that came to 285. And that covers all the costs, because the costs here come to 1.9 million. And that is the same as the costs up here, 1.9 million. But here they're organized by department: machining, inspection and packaging, where they're allocated, or for the factory as a whole in the case of the rent. And here we've got activities within the factory, irrespective of where they're taking place, and we've got a different analysis of the budgeted data. And remember that these again are expectations, these are budgets. But we need specific data in order to divide these costs up on an equitable basis. We need to know what usage of these services do the two products make. Now, the production that's budgeted for HM600 is 18,000 units. For HM650, it's 3,500. This is the big product, and this is very much supplementary to that one. Each of these requires different times on the machine, 5 hours here and here 4. And the number of setups associated with production of this particular product is 8 during the production cycle. And HM650 looks very much more sort of intensive. The volume going to be produced is only 3,500. It is going to demand a production setup of 15. So much smaller runs here than with this particular product. This product, however, is slightly more risky. It needs a lot of inspection. And I know there's 18,000 units here, so maybe it's not as bad as I think, but the number of inspections for production will have to be 540. And with this one, HM650 product, it's only going to need 210. Now, basically, the calculations are going to be exactly the same as for traditional product costing. So let's go into the workings. Now, can I say before we look at this, activity-based costing is really quite hard to understand. Total absorption costing is hard to understand, but we can imagine with total absorption costing the product going through the production departments, the service departments servicing the other departments. We think, generally speaking, in terms of geographical areas, and modern production techniques change all of that. Now, the machine hour related costs is the most difficult of these to deal with. So bear that in mind. We deal with each product in turn. We start off with the first product, HM600, and we start off with the number of units that we're going to be produced. We're given that, and we're also told that each unit is going to take 5 machine hours. So the total machine hours in production taken up by HM600 is going to be 90,000. HM650, we're producing 3,500 of those. Each one is taking 4 hours, and so the total demand on machine time is going to be 14,000. Now, if we add those both together, we'll see that that comes to 104,000 machine hours. So the charge for machining is going to be, the budgeted cost is of the budgeted costs, which are 760. The cost we're apportioning here is taken from the cost pool, and it's 760. And we just do a quick proportion. We take 90,000 over 104,000 for product HM 600, and 14,000 over 104,000 for HM 650. And that allocates or divides up. The portions are 760, 658 for product HM 600, and 102 for product HM 650. The others are much easier because we don't have to work out the total in the usage base. So when it comes to setup costs, product HM 600 is going to take 8 setups in the budget period, and HM 650 is going to take 15. So the total setups is going to be 8 plus 15, which is 23. We go back to the cost pool, and the costs of administering the setups is going to be 475. And so we just apportion that 8 23rds to product HM 600 and 15 23rds to product HM 650. And that comes out at 165 and 310. The material order costs will be allocated in a similar way. 4 orders have to be placed for HM 600, and 8 orders will have to be placed for HM 650. And remember, that's just a case of measuring it. We don't have to interpret that. That will have to be measured within the business itself, and the engineers and the accountants will have to identify these as driving costs. So that gives us a cost base here, very easy to understand, 12 and 4/12 of the 380. And I'll go back at the risk of confusing everything. There's that 380 there. And we're just dividing in the ratio of 8 23rds and 15 23rds. So we get 165 and 310. And then we have the materials order costs, pretty much the same. 4 is the weighting for material ordering costs for HM 600 and 8 for HM 650. That's a total of 12,000, I think. So 4/12 of the 380, I'll not go back up, but it's the figure up at the top, will be charged to HM 600, and 380 by 8/12, 253 to the nearest whole unit to HM 650. And inspection is pretty much the same as previously, 540. So there we have it. We now build up the apportioned costs, and we get 1155,746, and they add up and reconcile with the total of 1900. And the number of units produced is 18,000 of HM 600, and this product has got 3,500. So that gives us an overhead charge per unit of 64 here and 213 here. And so using activity-based costing, the cost of this unit will be materials, direct materials, plus direct labor, plus any direct expenses, plus this overhead charge of 64. Now this, of course, is different from the total absorption costing base. And that's because we've used a different method. We've put a different weighting. Previously, under total absorption costing, the weighting was on the philosophy that it was geographical areas of the factory that drove the overheads of the business. So with full absorption, there's 94 overheads charged to HM 600 and 59 to HM 600 and 650. Activity-based turns the tables, you might say. And when we look at activities, then in terms of overheads, HM 600 is very much less demanding in terms of overheads, only 64, but really quite demanding in overheads when we look at HM 650. And to some extent, we can see why that is so. We've got our drivers where the number of setups is almost twice as much for HM650. The number of material orders is twice as much. But on the other hand, and this is pro rata, quite high. So it's because we just used a different system. I wonder if I can sort of get back. So that's basically it. That's a quick outline of activity-based costing. Apart from what's included in this particular case study, we're not demanding any more specialized knowledge of activity-based costing or full absorption costing other than what is in this case study, plus the notes in both the postings. And this also finishes the management accounting part of the syllabus. So we're going on to financial accounting next week.